All right. Hello, hello. Welcome to our chat today. I am Elizabeth. I am the head of growth here at Viral Moment. I am super excited to be hosting this webinar for you alongside a friend of ours, Wendy, who is the founder of Social Studies Group. And today, what we're going to be diving into is a look at a very niche data set across TikTok, where we analyzed and tried to understand how can one niche data set actually be applicable to multiple facets of your organization. And so Wendy owns and runs this company called Social Studies Group, where she's able to dive into the data and give you some of these details. So Wendy, tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do in your company before we dive into the good stuff.
Awesome. Thanks for having me. I started the Social Studies Group in 1995 before social media was even a term. And we've been doing social media analysis for decades. It's been a blast. It's been so much fun to watch all the changes and the tools, which is one of the reasons that I love doing this work with Viral Moment. It's so interesting how the world has changed and what's possible now that was never possible before. And so yeah, this is really exciting. I picked a topic that I absolutely love that's very near and dear to my heart, swimming. And we're going to look at how different audiences within the organization can take advantage of this data.
I love this. What was 1995 social media? Was that like AOL?
There was the internet, but nobody said social media. I mean, there wasn't Facebook, like it was just blogs and forums, lots of forums.
Okay.
But I did do work in AOL and CompuServe in those, and I also did work on Usenet.
Oh my gosh, that's a throwback. Okay.
Yeah, real throwback. I mean, it's really different, but it's so much fun now to watch on Reddit, which I spend a little too much time on Reddit. It's so much like the olden days for me to be able to think back about how these very niche communities talk to each other, and it's so warm and so welcoming and helpful, and that's how it used to be. So it's been very interesting to watch these changes over the years. I feel like we're starting to kind of come back to the roots in some respects.
Yeah. Do you know what? That's really good. We'll dive into some of the communities that you found in this data set as well today. But I think communities in TikTok is bringing that into almost the video space. So Reddit does a really good job of that being a little bit more text-based, and kind of that forum heavy conversation style. But TikTok's got those communities too. And people, they give a lot of feedback. And it seems like that really beneficial space to just like air out your problems or questions.
Totally agree. And back in the previous times, we didn't have video to be looking at. I mean, there might be images, but nobody had easy access to take video. And if they did, it was pretty horrible. So it's not like it is now. So it's really fun to be able to be so much more visual, and you get to know people in a very different way when you actually see them and talk to them. It's just awesome.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Cool. Well, this is super great. I'm really excited to dive into this. So like Wendy said, we dove into swimming, and by we, I mean her. I sat there and cheered her on, and Viral Moment helped to provide the data so that she could run this analysis. But let me go ahead and pull it up for you. And let's take a look at swimming trends and forecast.
Terrific. So of course we have to have some swimming pictures. So this report is an investigation into swimming, and the goal is to look at how these topics and insights around one piece of data can help in various different ways. And I'm going to dive a little bit into equipment and training and strokes and some other things around swimming that I think are interesting, and I hope you do too. Yes. Okay. So before we start anything else, I'm going to tell you what the data tells us. And it tells us that there's lots of room for elevating the swimming conversation. There's room to talk more about training, about products, about seasonality, and across organizations, there's a huge opportunity because the conversation, while very in depth, is not as broad as I would have expected. So I believe strongly that there's room for growth in product development, in marketing, definitely in influencer programs, and in all kinds of partnerships. There's a lot of different products and a lot of different services that tie into this sport. Swimming is such a passion sport. The posts are almost all positive or funny, and we'll talk about that too, but a lot of happiness and joy, and a lot of talk about consistency, because like any other sport or hobby, when you're consistent, it pays off.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love this too. I mean, we're niching down into swimming, but I mean, I've talked to you about this before we went live with it too, but we'll go into a little bit about how there's like partnership opportunities for brands that like maybe right now have nothing to do with swimming. So if you're watching and you're one of these brands that are like, oh, I'm interested, but like I don't have anything to do with swimming, like I work in coffee. Swimmers like to go in the morning. They need their energy to get in the pool. I mean, there's a lot of different partnership opportunities that are surfaced in this too. So regardless of where you live in the space of brands or industry or market, the data from a niche segment can actually be really applicable to like a variety of areas. So yeah, let's
100%. And a lot of the swim practices, particularly masters, are like at 5:30 in the morning. So I'm with you on the coffee.
we need more caffeine in this world.
Yes. All right, I'm going to start with equipment because I just think it's fascinating, particularly swim caps. So there is branded content for swimsuits, but there's not that much branded content about other equipment. Swim caps are almost 20%. Swimsuits are almost 60%, which is not surprising, particularly because Viral Moment does a very good job of capturing images. And so people are wearing swimsuits in lots of the images and lots of the videos. And so that's really interesting and not shocking, but definitely interesting. And there are some new brands that are in the marketplace, which is kind of cool. Hair care is the third largest equipment. And I call it equipment because it's essential. From a swimming point of view to take care of your hair, but also thinking about snorkels and fins and pool buoys and goggles. Goggles are a really big deal these days, and kickboards. So they're all really important. Other equipment is mostly non-branded, providing opportunities for brands and influencers. So if you're an influencer who is into swimming, it would be great to talk to the brands. And if you're a brand that is looking to promote some products, there's influencers out there who would be really great for you. Some of them are professional athletes, but a lot of them are not professional athletes. There are tons of people out there who are triathletes or even casual and recreational swimmers, but who take it very seriously. So there's a big spectrum of what I consider to be people who are opportunities for being influencers in this category. Hair care, we're going to talk a little bit more about, but there is lots of room for growth.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And just to point out that on every slide, we've included a little circle telling who it would apply to in the organization. This would be for marketing, for product development, or for influencer.
Yes, I love that. So just once again, reminder to those that are watching that what we like to do and what Wendy's really good at is like taking this data and then knowing how it's applicable to every part of your org. So sometimes you look at data from just the point of view of, marketing or product dev or executive suite, but those can cross each other, and there's ways that communication can move up and down the ladder really seamlessly with the right type of data and of course the right type of analyst to pull it all together for you.
Absolutely. All right, so let's talk about swim caps. There are lots of new swim caps out there. If you're not a swimmer, that might be shocking to you because they seem pretty darn basic, but they're not. So there's a couple different things, and a lot of this has some ethnicity attached to it. For instance, the one in the middle, which the brand is called Oak Econor. And what's interesting about that is, that one's Soul Cap. It has a lot more space for larger hairstyles and for people with lots of hair, and a way not to ruin your nice style while you're swimming. So that's really cool. And the one on the left is called Hairbrella. They actually started off being caps to keep your hair from getting wet in the rain. And then they developed them for swimming. And if you put it on properly and it attaches in the back and it's silk lined on the inside and really soft, it should keep your hair dry so that when you take it off, your hair looks just as nice as it did before you went in the pool. And most swim caps, like the one on the right, your hair gets wet. I mean, it seeps under the vinyl and under the stretch. So that's really interesting. This one, though, also is saying that it keeps your hair nice. And I haven't tried that one yet, so we have to see. The price points are very different. $9 for the one on the right to $40 for the one on the left, and the one in the middle is $15. So it's a pretty big range. I mean, $40 for a swim cap sounds like a lot of money, but I think they're doing really well. And I've seen lots of influencers in that program, so it's really cool. They're definitely working it. And they have really interesting customer service. So, because I actually bought one. Anyway, there's room in the market for other options. There's people with all sorts of hair issues. And I know a lot of swimmers. Every female swimmer that I know who has hair is concerned about swimming and getting their hair wet, particularly when the weather's cold. Then you go back to work after a lunch swim and you have a conference call and you have a wet ponytail. Everybody wants to look professional and still have their hobbies. So there's a really, really big market here for marketing. Who are you going to talk to? This is a very niche, very, even broken down into smaller niches within the swimming niche. Product development, there's opportunity to develop more products that are going to be really great. And there's definitely influencer opportunities here. Hairbrella, like I said, is doing it. The others I haven't seen. them doing anything with influencers, but I think it could be pretty useful because the engagement can be terrific.
Yeah, and we've seen too, especially, we worked with a lot of brands and segments and products over at Viral Moment, but once you start to niche down into like a smaller segment and then you start to push out that targeting, if you get, you can identify the creators, you can start to see what are some of their needs, what are they commenting on, what are some of their problems, and then you just address that with your product and of course like the value to them. We've seen some really successful campaigns for hyper niche markets that just make that product go wild. And I actually think Hairbrella is following this type of formula right now because I'm seeing it show up and I haven't searched for swim caps yet, but
Oh, wow.
I do see Hairbrella like appear across kind of like the whole hair space. So it started niche. It does grow. That's, virality, right? This is a really good place to start. This is great information.
Yeah. And the other thing to think about also is, and maybe off topic, and you can tell me if it is, but when you're looking at influencers, a lot of time people are looking for these people with huge followings, and it's not necessarily the case. Someone can have huge influence within a community and have a modest number of influencers, but have followers, but have a really, really strong grip on the marketplace, and people care about what they have to say, and they can have tons and tons of influence on their followers. So, I think it's important to remember influencer can be different in different situations.
Oh, totally. We just did this analysis for a company on a campaign that they had launched, and they had influencers of all sizes, the ones that are like the most popular, about 50 million followers, and it's wild. And then they went, all the way down to like the really micro influencers. And what we noticed was that all of their micro influencers in the comments, they all had actually like a way higher positive sentiment and a reaction statement from all of their followers versus the ones who were like way bigger. Those people tended to just like immediately have a little bit more negative things like, oh, this won't work. You're just being paid to say this, blah, blah, blah. And so it actually kind of like, it was interesting to see that script flip to be more positive on the micro influencers. So they started leaning the campaign more towards micro influencers because they're reaching more of a market that cares rather than spreading themselves too thin. So for that brand specifically in that campaign, that was a really interesting way to analyze how really influencers work.
I've seen similar trends in other industries. So I think that there's really something to that and definitely worth exploring. It also you might be able to get a lot more different content out there because the budgets might be a little bit smaller. So that's also another thing to think about. You can kind of reach farther.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So, of course, more about hair. This is interesting to me for a variety of reasons. Something that you said, Elizabeth, earlier. So the brand We, which is the one on the left, the one with the girl with the long hair, is saying thank you. She's using those products for swimming. They're marketing it for swimming, but it is not a swimming hair care product. It is just a nice high-end hair care product. They have a whole full line, but they're talking about swimming in this. And so that was really interesting to me. So they've decided that that's a market for them, but that's not what their product specifically is. The other ones are a little bit different. The one in the middle and the one off on the right, both of those are meant for swimmers to keep your chlorine out or to get the smell out or to protect your hair before you swim. And there are quite a few of those brands out there, but there's lots of other options. And so I thought that was fascinating that there was quite a bit out there from non-swim brands. And so that could be a really interesting niche market if you're in hair care of some sort. Even if you're not a swim product, you could talk to swimmers. And there's some really interesting undercurrent hashtags that go along with that. None of them are shocking to me, but I think they're kind of fun. Natural hair, mermaid hair, coily hair, curly hair, and then of course hair talk, which is, I'm sure, a huge community, which is a really fun way to bring two communities together, and healthy hair, which I think is really super positive also. So it's just kind of interesting to think about what you can do with marketing and then product development in this category.
Yeah, if you're looking to expand, there's definitely room in other niche areas outside of just, hey, we do like great hair products, end story. It's like, we do great hair products for swimmers. Even though you're not a swimming product, like here's a little niche thing. And swimming becomes popular a couple times a year, right? We have New Year's for resolutions. People want to get in shape. And then there's also summer for swimming, and people want to keep their hair, not green if they're in the pool all the time. So
totally. Yeah, definitely. That's all true. And I forgot what I was going to say. Anyway, moving on.
Well, good.
Yeah. So hair's good. So let's talk about strokes. One of the things that I wanted to point out when I bring this up and talk about what strokes are showing up in the data is that if this was an older group of people, you'd probably see breaststroke higher and butterfly lower, because that's kind of reality, that a lot more of the older swimmers are doing breaststroke and freestyle still being the top one. And a lot of the younger swimmers doing butterfly, because a lot of the older folks don't have the shoulder strength to do that anymore. It doesn't mean that that's absolute, but it's interesting. And it's definitely different than what I see in my pool, for instance, because when I swim, there's a lot of old people there and there's not a lot of butterfly. So it's just kind of interesting to think about. But of course, those 4 strokes, breaststroke, backstroke, butterfly, and freestyle, make up the IM, and they're the primary strokes out there. The other things that showed up with strokes, or that I put together with strokes because I think they're important because they're skills, is flip turns, pull sets, and kick sets, because when you're training, you're going to be doing sets. And there's a lot of information here. There's a lot of how-to technique. There's instruction. There's room, though, for new ways to teach, and there's some techniques out there. There's brand sponsorships. There's a little bit, but there's not much. And also, there could be longer form guides and videos, and this could be shout outs and directing to other things. So there's a lot of information out there about swimming, but there's not much connection between what we're seeing on TikTok and what we're seeing in the broader instructional world. And there's definitely room to bring those things together. There's definitely room for brand partnerships, for influencer programs, for product development. Not necessarily, when I say product development, I'm thinking training videos and other kinds of maybe not distinct products, but services and marketing.
Yeah. And there's, to your point too, like there's a lot of people are shifting to using TikTok for finding specific things. So it's almost like becoming like an SEO, search engine. So instead of being Google, like what's the best way to do a breaststroke, they're actually going to TikTok and they're typing in what's the best way to do a breaststroke, and seeing kind of what that conversation comes up as. So if there's not any answers, then that's
right.
There's a need there that people are actually trying to find this information.
Yes, absolutely. Plus, there's a lot of new swim schools out there. I'm not sure if you're familiar. There's like a kids swimming school franchise that's out there that people are building like in shopping centers. I don't know if it's called Swimmy or something like that. I'm not sure exactly what it's called, but they're popping up everywhere. And why aren't they here?
Yeah, they should totally
be here. And there's even, there's adult stuff too. And there's all kinds of seminars and training. And there's just so many opportunities. And swimming is just such a great, great sport. If you ask me.
And parent talk is massive. I mean, yes. Oh my gosh, toddler talk, parent talk is huge. And so if this Swimmy, we'll call them, sorry if that's not the name.
I don't think that's it, but it's something like that.
Figure it out. It's a cute name. Someone must have taken it. It's yours. But if that company has an opportunity to reach parents are on TikTok, like millennials, we're parents now, like we're on TikTok. It's not just the younger generation.
And I bet they're searching for how to swim or how to teach my kid to swim.
Yes,
so,
I did.
There's place there. Yep.
Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly. And to your point from earlier, seasonality, summer is huge, but in this particular year, the Olympics were huge. And the swimming in the Olympics is, so popular. I mean, it's almost just like, the figure skating in the winter, swimming and diving is so much fun to watch. And this year with the double diving, there's just a huge amount of content that was put out there. But it really does start to fall off in the fall. Obviously, in this country and lots of others, it's warm throughout the year or at different times of year. So it's, interesting to see how that happens. But you definitely see the bump back up in January when people are trying to rethink how they want to be. And I know the pools are mobbed in January, and it's kind of hard for the people who are regulars, but we always welcome new swimmers. And so there's a huge opportunity for brands to get involved there. And there's still time. Because you can do TikTok marketing, you can do video marketing pretty quickly these days. It's not like it used to be where it was months of production to get commercials put together, So
and that drop off from like January to February. You might be mobbed the first 2 weeks in January, but looks like by the time February rolls around, like,
we're fine.
People gave up. People gave up their fitness goals.
Yeah. I actually was thinking I might start going on vacation for all of January and just come back in February.
Go swim in someone else's pool for a while.
Exactly. So the top topics, if we look at the entire data set, I wanted just to kind of step back an inch and say, what is all of this data about? And it's about a lot of different things, and we've talked about them, but Olympic and competitive swimming is a huge part of this data set. And how could it not be? The Olympics are huge and swimming is such a big deal in there. So there's a lot of that, but also just swimming as a sport and as recreation. So not everyone is taking it 100% seriously as I'm swimming laps. I'm trying to improve my speed or my, my being more streamlined. Some people are just having fun. And that's fine too. But there's also survival skills and just general enjoyment. Diving and high intensity water sports are definitely a part of this. High diving is hair raising to watch, but it exists, and cliff diving and all of that, but also underwater training and then just other physical demands in these kind of more intense water sports. But safety and skill development, when we were talking about lessons, is very important, particularly with children. And there's some of that. And there's also cultural and social media influences, just talking about humor and trends and discussions. And, every subculture has its own jokes. And I'm going to talk in a minute about humor, but we all think, the swimmers think that we're so funny when we laugh about the chlorine in our hair or whatever else it is. We just think it's hysterical. And maybe it's not to everybody else, but it definitely does have its own little world. So the cultural influence and the importance of swimming competitively and recreationally is really pretty ubiquitous through this content.
Yeah, there's a lot of space here. The underwater training reminded me, I saw this thing in my my local town's pool. They're doing a underwater hockey as like the winter sport. So like, one, you have to probably know how to play hockey, and then two, you have to definitely know how to swim. But it just reminded me, I was like, see, that's like a hyper niche community, and it is like packed. Like there's like a wait list for people trying to like get into this underwater swimming, like adult sport league, I guess.
So funny. I want to know more.
I know. Yeah, same. I'll find more information and share it with you. I want to go and like watch one of these like rec games and see what happens, because it's fascinating.
Totally.
But
I used to play water polo, which I think is the scariest sport in the whole entire world. But at my pool, they have spin bikes in the pool. We have water spin.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So fitness opportunities in pools is like way bigger than, the olden days with the pool noodles, and you just kind of like lift and.
Totally. The other thing that we have at ours is these great big floatable, they're like yoga mats, but they're kind of thick. So they're sturdy, and you stand on them and you balance, and you do yoga in the pool on the mats.
That's fun.
Very fun.
Yeah. See, whole new opportunity here for partners.
Some people are doing burpees and things like that on those pads. I mean, there's some calisthenics, there's some pretty intense stuff. So it's really, it's a big market. There's a lot of different things in crossover.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So actually personal trainers and things like that could probably fit into this category too, as far as marketing and opportunities.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. How to like, every third day use the pool for whatever it is that you're trying to work on.
Right. Okay. Influencers. So this is a little small. I hope everybody can read it. I wanted to pull out the top influencers ranked by the number of swimming videos that they put out there, because I think that part's important. And also, I think it's important to note that they have a huge variety of followers, from millions to the smallest one has 9. But that person who has 9 followers put out 34 swimming videos. Now, obviously, that's not who you'd hire as your influencer, but clearly there's something going on there. I mean, that's pretty interesting. But a lot of them are huge brands like NBC Olympics, shocker, or ESPN or Swimming World, Team USA, My Swim Pro. However, Swim Outlet is a retailer who sells all kinds of swimming products, and they have 140 swimming videos in this time period, which is January till October, through October in this year. So not 10 months. That's a lot of videos in 10 months. And they have a lot of followers, almost 65,000 followers for Swim Outlet, which is pretty substantial for someone who's selling products. The other one that's interesting, I think, is Sporty Swim, which is a brand that makes swimming suits, bathing suits. Okay. And they have almost 81,000 followers. They've done somewhat fewer videos at 42, but still, that's a fairly big portion of the content, considering they're selling bathing suits. But it's fun. Their content doesn't talk about selling suits. It's about swimming and about the culture and about the sport. And they're really well done. So it's pretty interesting. Producing content and that is good for the sport is good for you, and it helps everyone. So it's really interesting to think about not just selling, but helping to support a whole topic.
Yeah, and leaning into like what it is that you're doing. So even to your earlier point about like hair care products, if you're not necessarily a swimming hair care brand, but you have an opportunity to lean into the swimming community, what is it that some of the swimmers talk about and how can you make your content relatable?
Mhm.
And so even watching some of these like swim outlet um, types of videos, you can kind of get a handle on like what is the community about or partnership with them. Hey, hair care product, look
Mhm.
at these people, you know, even the ones that aren't the brands on this list. I think there's actually less brands on this list than there are just non-branded creators. So
Yeah, I
lots of
agree.
easier.
Yeah. And there's other, as you say, there's other opportunities. I mean, there's so many things that are not necessarily swimming products that are used in the swimming world. You know,
Mhm.
flip-flops, like those Adidas slides. Do you know how many people at the pool have those same slides? You know, that's
Yeah.
a great opportunity. Anyway, there's tons, and it's really interesting to think about those crossovers. Okay, I promised you I would talk a little bit about humor. Um, it's a prominent theme. You know, there's mishaps. Somebody jumps in and, you know, something falls, you know, something unties, or they can't get their tech suit on well, and they're like freaking out about that, or whatever the things might be, things that swimmers think is funny, you know, the awkwardness is like nose plugging, people who wear those, or that they look funny and things like that. But there's a ton out there. And I personally, and this is a personal belief, and Elizabeth, you might disagree and say you please do. I think TikTok has a lot of funny things. And I think that if you can be funny about a topic that is serious and do it well, it's just so much more engaging. It's just so interesting to make a little bit light of things that are actually kind of serious to you. So it's fun. Um, and there's
Yeah.
just a lot out there.
Humor goes far. I've totally like one of your things is like missing your turn. I have totally missed my turn when I've been swimming before, and I'm just like, oh god, this is so embarrassing. But like,
Mhm.
no one's actually watching you. Right? It's just like an internal thing. But it is. It's funny if someone was to make a video like that in like a meme format. I mean, it would go wild.
Yeah.
The community.
I kind of wish I had a GoPro. I crashed into somebody at the pool yesterday, and it would have been a very funny TikTok. It was very embarrassing, and I know him really well, so it wasn't so terrible. But oh my gosh, so embarrassing. Anyway, moving on, the swim talk community, which is a big part of this data set, is super interesting. There's 1.3, 1,300 videos in this time period with 214 million views. So that's a lot of views. So Swim Talk also has a share of the conversation where there's other swim communities that are also tagged in here, like Swimmers of TikTok and Swimmer TikTok, and also Viral TikTok, but lots of other ones, some that aren't even swimming related. So when we talked about the downstream ones, some of those are just the same. But the other thing I really wanted to point out is on the engagement. You know, we looked at the seasonality, but you don't see that seasonality here when it comes to engagement. People are engaged in swimming all year. There's almost the same amount of comments. It's gone down a little bit in the beginning of Q4, but the shares and the views and the volume are pretty similar. And I think that's really interesting to think about. So this community is really strong and really consistent.
Yeah, that is super interesting.
Mhm. And big reach, big reach. So some opportunities within Swim Talk. Um, Sports, it's a great crossover because you can go to broader sports. Beauty, we talked a little bit about hair. Exercise, you know, there's not just swimmers out there. There's people who do swim aerobics. There's a lot of other exercise related things, and plus a lot of people use swimming as their workout. Music, which I'm going to talk about in a second. Clothing, emotion, and social media. So, you know, even just the things that people talk about within this community relate to so many other things that there's opportunities for all kinds of reach and partnerships. And partnerships to me is such a key part of this conversation because we all, you know, we can just all do better with others. Doesn't mean everything needs to be a partnership, but sometimes when you just find just the right company to work together where your goals align, it can just really do a terrific job to increase your reach and the value.
Totally. And brand collabs have been so hot in the later part of Q of 2024. And I imagine that's going to like be the same type of trajectory that we're looking for and looking at in 2025. As you know, there's the Reese's collab and there was the Michael Sarah V collab. And I think there's just a whole lot of collabs that are coming out with brands. could make those partnerships to increase the reach to, you know, meet more of these niche markets and talk to the real customers that care about it.
100%. Totally agree. Some of the hashtags in the conversation are kind of interesting to me. Swimwear shows up pretty well. Olympics For You page, which, you know, sorry, For You page shows up on everybody's things. But just the words like swimmer and swimming, I mean, and sport and athlete and Olympics, like these are what you would expect, but these are some marketing things to think about when you're putting together your text or your visuals, to think about what people are talking about and what is going to garner other people's attention. Particularly because people are using TikTok as search. And so thinking about it that way, I think is super important.
Definitely.
All right, I promised you I'd talk about music. Music is super engaging. It's not new to be able to swim with music, but the technology has really gotten better. This is two different options, but there are others out there. But the reality is, I was shocked at how little they were talking about music in swimming. So everybody I know who swims listens to music or to a workout, which can also be done there. And these tools and these players are amazing. That red one just goes right under your bathing cap in the back, and it's just a bone conducting thingamajiggy that just sits in your bathing cap. The one I have bone conducting headphones that hooks to something that has my Spotify playlist on it. But there's so many different kinds, and it really does mix up the experience. Sonar, which is this one on the right, is the third most viewed in Swim Talk. So that's reasonable. That's pretty good. I mean, it's really gotten a lot of views. And so not everybody owns one, but people are thinking about it.
Well, this is wild. So when I first found out about this, I think I was talking to you, I was like, oh, thank God this finally exists. Like, I was like, I can finally get back into swimming and like, be, you know, stay motivated. It's really hard to stay motivated swimming if like you haven't gone in a long time. But even like just looking at this right here, there's only, you know, we're looking at a sample size, of course, but like there's 39 videos in the sample, but 9.5 million views over 39 videos. That's wild. So the people that are talking about these products, where there's people like me that are like, oh, this exists. Like people are unaware that this product even is on the market. Like they want it. They're sharing it. Like, look at how much engagement comes from just one of those videos is actually quite wild and not something you typically see.
Yeah, it's really crazy. And just as like brother-in-law research, when I'm at the pool and I see people with music or people, or I'm wearing mine, people stop every single time you get a question. So people do want to know. So it's a great opportunity here. Now, this doesn't really allow you to bring in anything that's outside of the swimming world, because you're not going to take your like iPod into the water because you're going to break it. But so it has to be special, it has to be, you know, ready for this. But still, there are opportunities, and there's I think influencers would be a great idea, particularly when I think about the music industry and I think about people who swim and what they swim to and playlists. I think there's a ton of opportunity. In fact, I do think that like Spotify playlists for swimming tied into these players could be so fun.
Oh yes, definitely. Like one of the influencers making a Spotify playlist using, you know, Sonar, like whatever of these products. Yes. You can even translate it to like to the summer portion of this. So outside of like swimming, fitness, and staying motivated, but it's like I'm having a pool party and I want the music to be underwater as well as like above water. So like
fun.
Dropping it in your pool and having some like, you know, music underwater too. People do gimmicky things like that. Always go off on TikTok.
Yeah, I like that. That's really fun. Emotions. You can't be sad when you're swimming. You can't cry underwater. That's what I always say to my husband. Anyway, 20% of the pie is happy, and then love and fun and best. I mean, these are like the motivation. These are wonderful emotions that are tied to swimming. And I think that for marketing, it's just a really good insight to think about what your brand stands for and what the people who are using swimming products care about. And people swim because it feels good, or if they're just happy. It's just something to remember when you're looking at tone and manner. It's awesome. So some niche marketing thoughts of things that could actually step into the swim world that may or may not be there yet. Swimsuits. Some are, there's not that many out there marketing right now. caps, there's room for it. We talked about music and playlists and devices. Clothing to and from the pool is not discussed at all in this data. And I think it's a really important thing because of the fuss and the warmth and all the different things. And hats, there's a lot of opportunity. Hair care we talked about, but there's not much talked about skincare and lotion. But I can tell you that in the locker room, everybody's putting lotion on because they're in chlorine and their skin's dry and it's getting to be winter, and there's an opportunity there. And that's not necessarily a swim brand. That can be anything. Equipment, there's a lot of room for promotion. I didn't see anything about, some about goggles, because there's some really cool goggles out there with like all kinds of electronics in it to show your laps and your speed and things like that. Really cool. And some that are fitted to your face where you like put a mold on and then they make them fit you. But other than the really cool ones, they're not really talking about much. You might see them, but there's plenty of room. Training, especially kids, recreational swimmers, and competitors, possible ties to these swim schools I mentioned. There's a lot of possibilities, and there are a lot of swimmers. I don't know, actually. I should have looked up what the number of swimmers are, but there's a lot of pools, and there's a lot of people who swim, and people care about it. So I think you should keep swimming.
Yes, absolutely. This is fabulous. I think this is such a good dive into how, like we said at the beginning, right? One niche data set can apply to multiple people within your org. So we went through marketing, we went through influencers, we went through social media, product, and all of this does lead up to, the C-suite where you're like, hey, if we lean into this market, we're showing this is how big the market segment is. So our budget will be able to reach X%. There's so much conversation to have there. And then outside of, if you're not even in swimming, like you just mentioned, lotions, hey, like, where are the lotion people talking to the swimmers that clearly need you? Because I promise you, if you tell them that your product works well once you get out of the pool, they're going to try it and they're going to love it. And that's how people work. And there's so much opportunity for this specific group you just talked about on TikTok. So much space.
Yeah. I just want to throw in one thing I forgot to mention before when we were talking about other brands that don't really fit into the market. My hairstylist told me just to go to Target and buy conditioner to put in your hair before you swim. She said, you don't need the fancy swim stuff. Just use this. But nobody markets it that way. But there's stylists out there talking about it. It must be something to consider. So there definitely are opportunities like that as well.
Yeah. And another partnership opportunity, hairstylists who deal with people who have swimmer's hair. What do they recommend? Can your hair care product partner with a hairstylist and do exactly what she just did to Wendy and say, hey, work on, do this product. We even sell it at our salon here.
Yeah. There you go. This was so fun. Thank you so much for asking me to come in. I had a wonderful time doing this.
Yes.
It's very fun to work in Viral Moment.
Good. Well, I am so glad. It's been great to have you here, Wendy. Thank you so much for diving through the data, for utilizing Viral Moment in your tool. I'm so excited this is part of your suite at Social Studies Group, so you can offer Viral Moment and TikTok analytics to the clients that come through. If anybody has questions or wants to reach out to us, Wendy's email is right here. Her phone number is also on the screen as well. If you just want to give her a call and ask a little bit more in-depth questions, not only around swimming, but also about, what other work has she done? What other things can she surface for you and your brands and your teams? And then I'm Elizabeth. You can always reach out to me here, elizabeth@viralmoment.com, if you just want to chat about all things video analytics. And as we lead into 2025, we're opening up more data sources and more things that you can pull in video insights from. Awesome. Thanks so much. Have a good one.
You too.